Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. So stupid. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Room and Board. My name is Chris George, and today we have another episode of Crowdfunding Countdown. Who would have thought there was going to be another one? But there is. And I didn't even have to use any of my filler picks this week. Like another Compass Games war game that, if you like Compass Games or ward games, well, you'll probably like. Because for me, I can't even get through the rule books, and I don't really like war games or know that much about them, so I stopped covering them and just brushed them under the rug. Really well made, pretty expensive. That's neither here nor there. Or my other safety, NONcoincidence dice. Young Cologne dice, which is just a regular dice with two big old wooden blocks glued on the sides of it so that you can roll it so it only shows 4 faces instead of 6. Which I actually think might be better than other D4s because with this D4, it can come in a cat theme. But actually the reason for these dice, and I guess I'm talking about them, but they're not in a timestamp, so that means they don't exist, is to mitigate those roll and move games. If you're tired of playing Snakes and Ladders the old-fashioned way, now you can use it with Yom Kippur dice, where you roll 2 and you either add them together to get the number or choose which individual one that you want. It just gives you ways to mitigate those roll and move games so that you can still play them now that you are an elite, evolved gamer who hates roll and move and random chance. But with these dice, the possibilities are ending there. Those are the possibilities. You add them together, or you take either one that you want. They come in 3 different varieties: slow, medium, and quick, with different values on each one. And there you go. I mean, I like this idea of changing up these roll and move games, but I think you should just take 2 dice and have the same rules apply if you have a very long, overwrought roll and move game. The only one I can really think of is Snakes and Ladders, and oh, wouldn't this make Snakes and Ladders spicy? Double the rolling! Anyway, we're not talking about that. Clearly we're not. Clearly we didn't just talk about that for however many seconds that was. No, on to the actual games this week. Thank you for being here. You're all the tops, and here we go. And first up, we have a game called Spirit of Eden. And no, I don't mean the message that human beings are sinful beasts who deserve to be punished, even though it was really God who put the apple there in the first place. And I don't mean my Uncle Larry's catchphrase at an all-you-can-eat buffet when those existed. I assume they're gone now. No, but I mean the solo card game, Spirit of Eden. Slightly a little less grandiose than those other 2 options, where you are going to face off against a number of gooms. And yes, I mean gooms. Gooms with an M and a Z and not an N. And if you know anything about me or this channel, you should know that this is probably going to end up being the pick of the week, and makes me want to back it on the spot. Now, there's some positives. This is very compact. You can fit it in your pocket and take it wherever you want to go. Christmas party too boring? Well, just sit in a corner and play with yourself. Play by yourself. I can't tell you how many all-you-can-eat buffets Uncle Larry was kicked out of for that sort of behavior. Now, you're playing on this 3x3 grid, and the goal of the game is to get the gooms to a certain area. I love saying it every time. Brings a smile on my face. Bring your gooms to a certain area, and then bring your allied piece to that same area, and then boom, you whack the gooms. You keep on doing that until all the gooms are gone. But what's also kind of fun is on your turn, you roll 4 dice, and you can assign each one of these dice to a different action card. So talking about that dice mitigation, each action card has its own different set of skills and what you can do and how you can manipulate the pieces, and you're going to have to be choosy depending on what you roll to see if you can navigate the board and get all the gooms got. That's the subtitle of Spirit of Eden. Spirit of Eden, get those gooms got. You a gooms? Gotcha. Gotta gooms them all. Anyway, it's about 24 bucks Canadian for this game, which is about standard for a smaller Kickstarter card game at this point. And of course, gets my standard response of I wish it was cheaper, but the shipping is really great. It's only €3 to ship it anywhere in France, or €4 to ship it anywhere else. So that would bring up my total to about 30 bucks, and I don't know, I think it's too much, but I like it as a little puzzle. I also like that on the campaign page, they encourage you to try out these speed runs and see if you can make it through the whole board in 5 minutes, like speed run video game style. So I think that's pretty cool. Definitely the puzzle itself and the game portion and mechanics look better than I expected to. It's just up to you if it's worth it or not. So if you're interested, that is Thursday, December 9th at 5:11 a.m. So wake up early and hit that back button. Oh, Larry's catchphrase at the buffet, by the way, was, "It's time to get into the spirit of eating." I'm so sorry. Moving on, we have Heroes of the Shire, which might have the slowest Kickstarter video ever, detailing every single upkeep phase at length with epic music behind it to support it. But at least it does give you a really good grasp of how to play. And that's pretty much how they describe in their tagline, which is a turn-based action RPG. It says with a unique fighting system. I don't know if I'd really call it unique. I'd call it a fighting system that's pretty standard, but it looks fun. Well, maybe not pretty standard, but I've seen it before. You cast your spells, and then you put a little cooldown dice on your specific spell, and then every turn it counts down until it's removed, and then you can use that spell again. And this is just to make sure you can't cast Fire Nova over and over and over again and just break the game. But how do these cooldown dice work? You just reduce them every turn. In the dice upkeep phase. They've got two different game modes as well. Co-op, where you journey together with a team of adventurers to take down a boss, or arena mode, where you just bash each other on the head over and over and over, last woman standing style. I also like that you do give buffs or negative status effects to characters which reduce in a cooldown phase over time. Sorry, which you take care of in an upkeep phase over time. But instead of having a token or something that you would just leave on the character, you have the boards. You do it on your own hero board and shift them over, and it seems like a very elegant and easy way to keep track of things while also being fairly easy to remember as well. This stands out to me as something that I feel like a lot of people will have a generally decent time getting into. It's not going to be too hard. There's an ease of play here that's really nice. But probably the best part about it is that if you start a game and then another friend shows up for game night, they can jump right in with their own character in the middle of the action. If you're doing a scenario mode. This is why I think this one is probably best suited to scenario mode, but I think this is really cool, and the enemy difficulty scales up when you do that. So you don't have to wait, you don't have to be manning different characters and then pass off a character when somebody comes in, like Zombicide, but you can have that late arrival, come in, jump into the scenario, and just start killing monsters with everyone. And I think that is the key to this game. If you have a group like that and you're always frustrated by that one person who isn't showing up, and you don't want to do a lighter filler game while you wait for them, you want to do a sort of meteor scenario, this might be the ticket for that. And then it's just like you've come across them in the wild and there they are. Unfortunately, the price point is fairly high. It's 103 bucks Canadian for basically half of the scenarios. You can choose Earth and Water or Fire and Ice, or you can pay the $136 Canadian for the collector's edition where you get all four, and that's obviously the route that you're going to go. There are, I think, 4 people who have chosen the Fire and Ice and 12 who've chosen the Earth and Water. I would have thought it would be different. To me, Fire and Ice feels like the better combo, but maybe I'm just spoiled from Terra Mystica. Still never played that expansion. Now, you'd think this would be a very large miniatures game. There aren't miniatures, and that's why I assume it isn't flying off the shelves like I thought it might be. But at this price point, you usually get a game with minis. Depends how attached you are to minis. I find with standees, I have a lot of games with standees. Well, Attack on Titan has standees, and every time I play that game, I say, oh, there's my character, and I put in the standee, and I don't care that it's a standee. I think, oh shoot, I hope this cardboard token doesn't get frayed more than it is, and then it goes in the holder, and I say, oh, I can't see that anymore, and I've immediately forgotten it. And it's not like my gameplay experiences would be enhanced by having a little Titan miniature running around, although it might be. We're getting off track. The rulebook looks final. It was really easy to get a decent grasp of everything. I mean, all you really need is their Kickstarter video to give you that sense of if you're interested or not, or really this video right here, the one you're watching. You should have a sense if you want to check into it further or not. The rulebook is more just about detailing all the combat and how combat happens, but it's pretty self-explanatory. You're not going to be rolling dice, so you know exactly how much damage everybody takes. So It's a little deterministic in that fact. To quote the campaign page, like I said before, I really do think that this scenario-based co-op mode feels like it'll be better for that jumping in point. It's nice to have a competitive arena too, when you just want to punch each other in the face. Anyway, if you're interested in that, you have to wake up a little less early on Thursday, December 9th at 6:58 a.m. Now, next up, we have Gambit of Kings, and this is going to be a quick one. It's not funding right now. I really don't think it's going to fund. It's at about 66% of its funding goal, so with 3 days to go, that's probably not enough time. And realistically, that's because if you're not in the US, where the shipping is the cheapest at 15 bucks, there's no way you should be getting this game. It's 35 bucks, Chess 2.0. It's a very chess-like game. Each character has their own unique movement, but what I thought was cool about this is that the characters, if the little pawns take out an enemy, they level up and become a better character. And I think that concept in itself is a really interesting one, which is why I wanted to highlight it. Maybe we'll see that in other games, but I think that giving the power to the pawns where they're dangerous if they take out a player, I don't know, there's something kind of exciting about that. And being able to swap in things like chess and Stratego, any of those sorts of games. 35 bucks US, but to ship to Canada, it's another 35 bucks US, so it's 70 bucks, which is like $90, and no way am I paying that for this sort of game. But if you are in the US and you do love sort of chess, you're bored with chess, it's overstayed its welcome. 2,000 years? Pah! I don't know. How long has chess been around? I think it's a long time. Feels like 2,000 years is thrown out a lot. When actually it wasn't invented until the Queen's Gambit series came out. Anyway, check that out if you want. That's also Thursday morning at 8:04 a.m. Now, next up, we have the Game of Non-Coincidence. Or, as I like to call it, Time to Join a Cult, the board game. And this is a special one. There's a lot to unpack here, but this is a game, can we call it that? I'm not sure. And this is about experiencing life. And honestly, I almost don't have any bits for this segment because, well, maybe you can see why if you've been looking at their campaign video right now. It's incredible. I wish I was cast in it. Maybe as that slimy guy who loves money. I really think this campaign may have broke my brain, but I think it is worth checking out because of that. So I want to share some of my favorite quotes from the campaign page. And it's literally every sentence. I could go through every sentence and it would be comedic gold, really. I could read it word for hours. Because, as they say, time is relative, and this game could take 42 seconds or 3 hours. It's up to you. Your player pieces are like rocks. They look like they're crystals. You know, the crystals that one friend would buy and believe that they would give them a good parking space. This used to be my girlfriend. We have a green rock in our car. So I'm gonna read some quotes. Game of Non-Coincidence is an exciting board game that can be used by anyone for gaining deeper self-understanding. It is a process that can free the players from the illusions and loads that they carry. It's a good tagline, it's a good start. The adventure goes through 3 levels: the mirror, the path, and life. But in this campaign, you can only purchase the first level. If you want to get to level 7 Laser Lotus, well, you gotta purchase the next ones, which involve donating your social security number to the cause. I imagine, presumably, I'm just guessing. Now for the rules of the game, and the rules are determined by the serendipity of the moment now. This is it for the rules of the game. Everything written from this moment onward is nothing more than our attempt to describe the indescribable, immeasurable, and unmanifested, along with some recommendations for the game. So there are some rules, but they're just recommendations. There are no rules. You just have this box, and you just have to feel out what you should do with it and live life. The recommendations can be understood like quantum mechanics. They both exist and do not exist. Since quantum mechanics sounds too demanding, we decided to call them just recommendations. And then it talks about the time length, which we talked about. That should give you a sense if you think the game is right for you or not. It's just incredible. And the whole game, you're actually just writing a letter to yourself, which at the end you can either share with others or keep it to yourself, which honestly, in terms of like self-discovery and compassion and love, and if these sorts of cues and questions, I assume they're cues and questions, trigger that sort of thing in you, Well, hey, who doesn't want more compassion and love and generosity in this world? That's fantastic. But I think we're being a little liberal with the word game. Maybe not. But my other two favorite parts about this game is that there are no dice, but it is a roll and move. So you just shout out whatever number comes into your head, and then you just add the digits together until you get a single digit and you move that many spaces. And then, if two or more people ever meet on the same space, these criteria apply. The first meeting, you gaze into each other's eyes. Here's an example of your inner intention. It gives you this. See me. Allow me to see you. The second meeting, holding hands, occurs. And the example of the inner intention of the hand holding is, feel me. Allow me to feel you. Third meeting, hug, love, inside. And on the fourth meeting, you have to share something that has never been shared with another human being. Remember that time you hit Reggie with your car? Well, now you are going to tell the group, and this is going to be a secret that binds us closer together forever. Anyway, it's a gift that keeps giving the more you scroll through it. I really recommend checking out the campaign page. And like I said, if it fosters that sort of environment of togetherness and love and compassion, that's fantastic. But more likely, it's just going to end up being the second weirdest orgy you've ever been a part of. And that deadline is, who knows, because time is still relative. And we're nothing but vapors. Moving along, next up we have Hexaquest, which is a trivia game that attempts to beat all other trivia games because it lets you only answer questions that you're interested in, which is kind of neat. There's 6 categories that you can choose from: backpacker, historian, tree hugger, gourmet, movie buff, and wise man. Which,
what are you even saying there, wise guy?
I said wise man.
Okay, nobody better be
You're
stealing
safe.
my catchphrase.
You're safe for now. Wise man, which is any sort of category that they want to throw in. Miscellaneous, some might say. And so if you're interested in answering the questions like, who invented the modern toothbrush? And the answer is China. The wrestler, China. I assume because they said who, they didn't say what country, they said who. So it's China. China. I don't do it good.
China?
That's my former president impression. I think it's pretty good.
Mexico!
I've always been pretty good at impressions. Or this super hard question, Karen Elaine Johnson is the real name of who? And they say it's Whoopi Goldberg, but let me tell ya, Whoopi is no other than Whoopi. There can only be one, the glorious creature, the ultimate Hollywood square. I assume she was on that show at one point. Whoopi Goldberg will never be a Karen. But Aunt Linda, if you're watching, you could be. Anyway, they certainly don't explain how to play the game on their campaign page, so thankfully they do have some videos. And it's kind of a neat idea. There's all these hexes laid out, and you can take a hex from the outside of this hex cluster, and that is the category or the point number, basically the difficulty of the question. So you do have some choice in determining what you do answer, and the questions seem fun enough. So if you like trivia, check it out. Certainly seems better than every game of Trivial Pursuit ever. And if you're interested, that's Friday at 9:58 a.m. Now, next up, we've got another 3 combo with Valeria Universe. Trick-taking, roll and write, tower defense, it's got them all. And why are there 3? Because triples are best. So let's get into it. Let's break them all down. First, we have Dice Kingdoms of Valeria, which is the roll and write. On your turn, you're going to roll 6 dice. 2 of them will be black, 4 will be different colors, and the 2 black ones will act as the harvest for everyone, kind of like a tan. So you can harvest for the sum of those 2 dice, plus the individual tokens as well, providing you have already crafted or hired the civilians necessary to hire in that particular row. You'll do that by using your other different colored dice for various purposes, either to control different sections of land, to hire citizens, to use some magic powers, all in pursuit of getting the most points. And the game ends when 3 guilds are completely filled up. There are 4 total guilds in the game. So your resource engine is going to get larger and larger as you play. You're going to explore different lands which give you permanent effects, such as adjusting and manipulating the color dice, all that sort of stuff. It seems pretty solid. This is my favorite out of the list. So only downhill from here. Next up, we have Siege of Valeria, and this is the tower defense one. This is designed strictly for solo play. It's only a solo game. And you have to defeat all the siege engines before the 7th round, or if one of your turrets takes 4 damage, then it gets destroyed and you lose because you have no more defense on that side and you get raided and you lose the kingdom forever. And in this one, there's nothing particularly noteworthy to highlight, but it seems like a fine tower defense if you like that sort of style of game. These siege towers at the top of the board will keep on firing against your rows and rows of warriors, and you have to use your warriors effectively, because they're randomized to start, to take out the siege towers as they advance and make sure that you survive. Basically, take them all out before the end of the 7th round. And finally, the third one is the trick-taking game that is Thrones of Valeria. And the cards look awesome. If you want cool art, this is the one to get. And this is kind of a neat twist on a trick-taking game. And honestly, thinking about it, I may go back on my statement that the roll and write is my favorite, because the person with the most money at the end of the game wins. Not who's won the most tricks. You kind of play in 2 rounds. You'll randomize the suits at the beginning of the game, basically which suit is the best and which is the worst. And then, like any standard card game, you're going to play a card. Everyone has to follow suit if they can. And then the person who has the highest card of the highest suit wins. But most cards, maybe every card, but most cards have an effect on them when you play them. So that can switch different houses around, and so suddenly your trump that you played is now worth less than everybody else's. Or cards just give you coins, which is great because you need that money to win. So it's a really neat concept. I like trick-taking games. The reason it may not be up at number 1 is because I don't get as clear a sense as to how it all interacts with each other, because I don't see all the examples of the cards in the rules. So I feel like I can see the engine of the roll and write a little bit more clearly through reading through the rule books rather than the trick-taking game, but the trick-taking game does also have some promise, I think. The tower defense, it seems fine, but I'm not a huge tower defense guy, and I'm also not a huge solo guy, so that's probably why I'm gravitating away from it. If you are those 2 things, definitely check it out, because just judging by the strength of these 2, that one seems solid, just seems simple, I guess. But one thing I do really love and want to mention about these 3 games is that when you're downloading the rulebook, you can't just see it, you have to download it, but you're also downloading all the files for any print and play components. So they're giving you the print and play for free for all 3 of these games. If you want to print them out, try them out, see if you want a physical copy. I think that's awesome. I think that's also really incredible for the roll and write. If you have 6 dice, you basically have the whole game, it seems. So definitely check it out. I think that's really cool. Shipping is okay. It's $7 for 1 game to the US, $16 for 1 game to Canada, which isn't great, but for all 3 games, if you can get in on people who want different games, maybe you each take one, it'll be $10 shipping for all 3 to the US, or $21 for all 3 to Canada. So get in on those group buys. I'll say it time and time and time again. Anyway, if you are interested in that one, that is Friday at 5 p.m. December 10th. Next, move over, Keyforge. Throw yourself in a fire, Soul Forge, because Richard Garfield is here with the actual evolution of the dueling card game genre with Mindbug.
So it's just like Duel Monsters.
Yeah. But where it differs is it's all from the same deck of cards. So you take 5 cards into your hand, you have 5 more cards as your deck, and your opponent does the same from this one standard deck. And then there's no mana cost, as with a lot of these games there are, and you slowly build up more mana over time. Nope. Just play them whenever you want, but make sure to time out your powers correctly, because you each have 2 mind bugs that you can play to take the card your opponent is playing and turn it against them, which is kind of a neat mechanic, and really the basis for how this game is framed. I do love that they're emphasizing that there are no randomized packs, there is no pay to win, which is significant in these sorts of games, because you are using that same deck of cards. So even if there were tournaments to pop up later on, it doesn't seem like they have many expansions yet, but I'm sure it'll be easy for them just to pump them out. You would just take one deck, and you'd play that one deck, and you'd see what you draw. So the price is 22 bucks Canadian, which isn't bad for a 48 card deck. There's a decent amount of variability there, especially since you're only using 20 cards each time. So it does look fun. I mean, I think it certainly isn't worth paying almost double that to get it to Canada. It would cost me around 40 bucks Canadian to get it here. It would be something that if I saw in the store for 10 bucks, for sure I'd pick up a copy. Would scratch a similar itch as Clash of Decks, but probably would be better, to be fair. Unfortunately, at that price, it's a little steep for something that I probably wouldn't play that much. But if you are interested, that is Saturday at 4 p.m. Now, next up, we have the game Devilish Dice. And I feel a little conflicted about covering this game because they're trying to encroach upon Trio's reign as one of my personal favorite segments that I've done. If you weren't with us around that time, it was way back around the Iridia week. That's when it was. And so I don't know if I can cover it because I'd really just be repeating the same jokes, but I thought those jokes were funny, so I'm gonna slip into something more comfortable, that is. That seems to fit the theme a little bit better, because this is a sexy game, an intimate experience. And you know what? It's basically just strip Perudo. Liar's Dice, but with some sexy punishments thrown in, real term. But the best part about this game is you have to bet against your partner's dice, but when you think that they're bluffing, you shout, "Devilish Dice!" Wait, I think it's the other way. Devilish Dice! Objectively, the best part about this campaign. In this sexy atmosphere that you're trying to create, you then have to shout, as instructed by the rules, "Devilish Dice!" Oh, it tickles me. The catchphrase, not the game. And then you see who bet too wildly, aka who was too big for their britches and should start shimmying out of them. But the best part about this game, and really made me want to talk about it and bring it up, is that there is this expansion called the First Dates expansion. I know it's actually a standalone game. It was about people connecting on a first date, probably just like a deck of cards of icebreakers, really. But there is a way to incorporate it into Devilish Dice. And I just am imagining the scene where someone misinterprets that because it's called the First Dates expansion, that it would be acceptable to do at, I don't know, maybe a cafe where you've met up with a person. You found that person who shares the exact level of board game enthusiasm that you do. And although what level that would be if you're bringing this, I don't know. Maybe you could try Strip Great Western Trail, little cowboy hat. But you mistakenly pull this out for some reason. Devilish Dice First Dates by Beardy Productions. And just experience probably the second worst first date that you've ever had. Now make sure when you play this game you are wearing the specified amount of clothing so that you have enough clothing points for your partner to remove. This is a real thing. And I actually think to gamify this system, to actually talk about it seriously for a second, as seriously as you can, Devilish Dice! But I think to gamify this system isn't a bad thing. And that's, I guess, how you would do it, and it makes sense. But when the sexy punishments don't start until near the end of the game, and you're just sitting there letting it all hang out in an undershirt and one sock, maybe I'm just insecure, but I don't personally feel like that would be appealing for anyone. Just no one. Please, let me get rid of this sock at least. Oh no, I should probably keep it. No, the sock was on my foot. You perverts. That's enough of that. I don't know. The things we find and share together. Next up we have the most nostalgic Kickstarter campaign that I have ever felt. And that is, of course, Atmosfear. The 30th anniversary Kickstarter. Now this is real Atmosfear. They're actually doing a 30th anniversary for Nightmare, which was called Atmosfear in some other places, which is a real shame because, well, according to my nostalgia, this is clearly the better version. They're both bad, but they're both also exceptional because this is the OG VCR board game that started them all. I can only assume. This heralded the very short-lived videotape board game where the gatekeeper will tell you to stop. Whose turn is it next, maggot? Hands up! And you have to put your hand up. Exceptional. Really an exceptional time. Back when I was a child. As a game right now, I don't think my nostalgia can cover the $90 price point that it would take, especially when I have a perfectly good Atmosfear right here, which is definitively, according to my nostalgia, the better version. You get to play as Baron Samedi, the zombie, Gavaudan, the werewolf, Elizabeth Bathory, the vampire, and Shantran, the witch, Khufu, the mummy. My personal favorite by the Gatekeeper's emphasis, hell in the poltergeist. It's too much. Hey, for $15 you can buy yourself a skeleton key, so if you ever fall into a black hole you can say, haha, I paid the designer of this game $15, so I get to ignore it. What I do love about this campaign existing is that the videos are going to finally be up on Vimeo forever, and you won't have to search for them on YouTube, which they're already on YouTube. So I want to play this game again. We didn't play it at Spooky Game Night, and I'm very disappointed we didn't, because the Gatekeeper's 1 hour video is just so funny. What's a real shame with this campaign is that they're not doing an additional video. If you're doing an additional video that only backers have access to, come on. Or if you're doing a video and you can actually make it randomized. So, because the whole point of this was you don't know what's going to happen, but if you've played this game more than a few times and you have a good memory, you'll remember the script that the video follows, because it's 1 hour total. So if there were randomized jumps and at randomized points you never would know when it was happening, I don't know, that could elevate it to the modern world and to the modern day. But they didn't do any of that. They just give you access to Baron Samedi shouting at you as well, which used to exist and is fantastic. I wouldn't recommend getting it, unfortunately, and yet I would. But it's way too expensive for what it is, let's be real. But if you are interested, that is at 5:02 p.m. next Monday, the 13th. Now, moving along, we have 2 more, and our penultimate game is Pathfinder Arena, where you are going to compete against other heroes to fight monsters in this arena, get the most glory points, and try to get the least misfortune points, because those are negatives, and win the game. But the cool thing about this game is that you're on this large grid, but on your turn you can manipulate the grid, pushing walls and such, so that monsters that were in front of you, that were too strong, get pushed through a wall and now appear in front of your opponent, which is a really neat puzzle. It kind of reminds me of Oros, if you remember that game back from near when we started doing Crowdfunding Countdown. So you'll always have this hero phase where you'll spend your hero actions to collect tokens and defeat monsters and reshape the arena. And then you'll have the monster phase where all the monsters will attack anyone who's close to them, and you can get glory points or misfortune points depending on the monster, I guess. And once you've wiped out a level of monsters, you get to level up your character, and then new monsters of the next tier appear, and you do it all over again. And once all the level 4 monsters are dead, the game is over, you tally up the points, see who wins. So it's pretty decent. It's your standard run around, fight monsters, use abilities, but I like that there's this character progression, and I really like the shifting of the arena. I don't necessarily like the price point. Well, I do. They have a standee version for $59 Canadian, which is great, especially when the full version with the miniatures is $146 Canadian. That is a very large bump for some plastic, and you don't need it. Remember how I threw in that little standee aside at the beginning? But if you are one of those people who thinks that they would prefer miniatures, this is actually why I'm really happy, in a strange sense, that I opted for the Aetherfields pretty much all in, is that I got this box of what I think are really cool sculpts, the Creatures of Aetherfields expansions, and now I just have this box of dedicated monsters that Zach is painting and will look gorgeous, that I can pull out in these situations. If I have a game that just has the standees, all you really need is one box of pan-applicable monsters rather than getting miniatures and the miniature pledge for each one. Sure, if they're really, really cool and you love painting and you love collecting miniatures and that's what you love to do, like, hey, go for it, whatever. But for those of us who are more budget conscious, this is something that I realized recently that I was excited about. We'll try to remember to implement if I'm feeling like it's lacking on the table or the table presence is lacking, to just grab this box of perfectly fun sculpts and pull them out and fight against those instead. So that's an alternate way of doing it. 59 bucks Canadian for a standee version of this. It feels pretty nice. The larger price point doesn't feel as great because I don't think this game is going to be that huge in scope. I think it's going to be an interesting puzzle, but I don't know if I want to pay 150 bucks Canadian and then shipping on it. So the 59 price point, this is one of those times where I think the standee version should have more people, but then again, it's Kickstarter and we all love our minis, so you know it doesn't. Anyway, if you are interested in that, that is 5:50 p.m. on Monday. And finally, we have Harakiri Blades of Honor, which is another cooperative campaign game. Maybe you've heard of that style of game, where you'll enter a fantastic and changing world. Honestly, cooperative campaign game where you enter a fantastic and changing world sounds like it could be a great tagline for Devilish Dice. Devilish Dice! But there are two main phases of the game, and they seem like fairly different experiences from all that I've read and listened to as well. And you have the adventure phase where you have this big map of Japan and you're going to run around exploring the island, uncovering quests that will have some sort of lasting effect on the campaign and the progression, until you get to the main meat of the mode, which is the exploration phase, which is your standard dungeon crawler where you fight big old monsters on a small little map. And you have 3 action points. Well, you have 3 action points in both cases, really. But in the exploration phase, you're going to use those action points to either move or activate your passive abilities, which cool down, like the unique Heroes of the Shire, or use your other cool samurai abilities or roll additional dice and try to match up symbols to do a more powerful attack using your items, all sorts of stuff. And one of the main draws for me in this is the actual exploration phase, and that is it hardly takes up any table space. This is, I think, significant because these games tend to be really large and sprawling, and to have one that is smaller is cool because every time you move into another area, the previous area kind of gets discarded. King of Average brought this up in his review, I noticed, and I think it's worth mentioning because it's something that doesn't stand out to you when just reading through the rule book and thinking about the mechanics and seeing how they interact. Now, where it does seem a little silly is that with all this saved table space, you actually have to go back and forth between the adventure phase and the exploration phase, the large map and the smaller little beat 'em up sections. But hey, maybe that's what you use the extra table space for, is you just have them both set up at the same time because you're kind of going to go back and forth between them. This reminds me of Etherfields a little bit as well, talking about Etherfields, but they had it on a smaller scale, so you could have them both out at the same time. Anyway, it's $159 Canadian for the base pledge there, which after shipping gets to that $209 Canadian range, you know, the famed 209 range that everyone keeps talking about, because it's $50-ish for shipping, which at that price point, it feels like it's really got to be special to get this one. But a lot of people are excited about it. I mean, I'm sure these people are mostly excited for 6 copies of Jikininki. It's just my favorite monster from that sort of era. My favorite monster in Rising Sun. Not based on powers, just, as I'm sure you could tell, based on the name. Kamainu and Yurei are obviously the best monsters in Rising Sun. But it's a decent rulebook to go through mechanically. It's a little long, but it's fairly straightforward. And basing something off of an action point system is solid. And so I think this will be an enjoyable experience if you were to get it. But it seems fairly standard to me in the dungeon crawler genre. So make sure you're excited about it if you're grabbing it. I will also say that the stretch goals themselves seem a little bit confusing. It seems like you may not get the Act 2 for your base pledge, but don't worry, every pledge is getting that Act 2 and those extra stretch goals as well. Just how it's broken up, it doesn't appear in the photo when you're breaking it down of the what's in the box, but it's at the end and you might miss it. So let me set those worries aside. You're gonna get them. You can just go base pledge if you don't want all the really cool sculpts that are included in the $300 pledge, because you get more expansion packs, etc. There are some gorgeous miniatures. If you're a painter, yeah, these look awesome. But again, make sure you're really excited about the game as well, or that you're going to get your money's worth if you're interested. So if you are interested, that finishes next Tuesday at 1 p.m. And that's it. That's it for the week. I anticipate we will be able to do one next week, and then that might be it for the year. We'll have to launch back up in the new year. But every week I do a pick for me and a pick for you. And this week is tough. Honestly, for both of these picks, I kind of want to just say, play a game that's on your shelf, because they're not necessarily hitting that level of interest that I like to have when I recommend things. But talking about them now leading up to this, they're just getting over the edge, so I will mention them. I think my pick for me, this is tough. My pick for me will be Pathfinder Arena, the standee version. I think there's going to be something really interesting about the puzzle there. You can see as I was talking about it, I went a little bit longer than I intended to because I think there's enough there with the leveling up in between rounds and the being able to manipulate the board itself. I think there's enough there that it would be an interesting experience. So that would be my tentative pick for me. I'm not getting it. I'm not like super sold on it, but if I had to pick one that's the most interesting to me, I think it's that. The Valeria, roll and write is close, and the trick-taking one is close as well. And then I think my pick for you, honestly, is Spirit of Eden. I think it's a really simple system. I think it's a really small, nice, light solo game if you're interested in that. I don't know if it should be the pick for you. I really don't. But I think, surprisingly, the Gooms are the ones that have me thinking about how that might be interesting. Let me caveat. Let me continue to caveat. These are caveated picks for you, just so we have an official one. I don't know. I'm really not too sure. My pick for you officially is play a game that you own. That is my pick for you. It really is. I had my little shout outs, but my pick for you is just play a game that you own. Nothing has particularly jumped out at me this week as being so significant that I would want to actively seek out. I think there's a lot of games that you would want to play, but not necessarily actively seek out. I think that's the difference there. So those are my picks. That's it. We're done. What are you backing? I'm sure Harakiri is going to be up there on a lot of your lists, maybe, because the art looks gorgeous, let's be real, and it looks pretty cool visually. But I'm interested, did I miss anything this week that you were hoping I would talk about? Is there anything upcoming? I assume Borderlands will cross that $1 million threshold soon if it hasn't already, so I've got to get to work on that. As always, let me know if there's anything that I missed. Thank you so much for watching. The official show is over, but I do want to say that the Patreon should be live right now. Thank you to those who have said you're interested in supporting me and that Patreon is the best platform for you. I'm going with Patreon, even though they do take like 10 to 14% of the donations and fees. It's fairly significant, but that's the cost of doing business on the internet, I guess. And so I bring that up. That is the reason why my lowest tier is at $2 and not $1. Because of that. I usually see people who only have a $2 tier and I think, why is it not a $1? You greedy little boy. And so I don't want to be a greedy little boy like that, but it's just to kind of offset the costs so that I can get more than 75 cents because there's the 8% fee and then there's the 5% transaction fee that they put on microtransactions and then there's the 10 cents that they do on every transaction as well. So that would put me to around like 77 cents. And so just to try to keep it into that, 10 to 14% range, that's why I'm going for the $2 one. The currency is also going to be in US dollars because a lot of the time, so are Kickstarters. And realistically, that's probably what I'll use this to fund or, upgrade equipment, get a better lighting system that doesn't constantly shut down on me every few minutes. Or microphones that cut out in the middle of the video. I have some upgrades. Or another better camera for live streaming, maybe some live stream top downs. Ideally, there's a lot of stuff that I would like to do on this channel, and I'm really, really appreciative of those of you who are interested in helping out the extra mile. Everyone who's subscribed and everybody who's likes and comments, you're all amazing. If you can't donate to Patreon, don't worry about it. I know we're all just trying to make it out in this tough, crazy world of ours. And I'm already truly, truly touched by the amount of people who have voiced their support for this channel over and over, and who've even said, yeah, please start a Patreon. I'm interested in donating. Even just a little, it adds up and it helps a lot and help me make these sort of upgrades that I want to work towards and inevitably keep moving forward to grow the channel and make this a larger and larger thing because I really, really enjoy doing it. I really enjoy spending time with you all. So let's have some fun over on Discord because that's usually the way these things go. If you do sign up for Patreon, I'll set up a Discord where we can, talk recommendations. You can vote for videos that I should do next. Share your input. It's always great to have things to look out for. Illuminati Dorito, that was a great idea about ranking and defining the game genres and mechanics, especially for those of you who aren't English first language. Sometimes that rapid fire jargon can be a lot. So I'm really excited to do that one. It's just going to take me a little bit of time to get that together. Anyway, again, my friends, all of you, thank you so much for supporting me in this next step of becoming, YouTube sufficient. That's the ultimate goal. If I can cover my rent and food and occasional game here and there, that would be, the dream. Or property taxes and food if, somebody has an extra house in Toronto laying around that they just want to gift my way. Anyway, enough of that. I've talked about this long enough, but I did want to talk about it a bit. Because this is the first day that I'm going to be launching it, and just explain my reasoning behind it all. I'll probably regurgitate the same information on the Patreon video as well. So thank you everybody for watching. Once again, my name's Chris George. I still do not have a catchphrase. Maybe my patrons could help me come up with one, because I have been constantly struggling. Or maybe it should just be Devilish Dice! See you in the next one.